I'll get 6:01, and we do have a quorum. Hopefully others will be joining us shortly. We'll get started with a roll call of who's here so far. I see Mr. Arena. He's present. Mr. Butita.
Here.
Mr. Schultz. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Let the record reflect Mr. Schultz did wave. He is here. Ms. Crosby.
Here.
And I think that's all we have for the moment. Angie Groscott, Chairman's report. We'll skip down to unfinished business unless there's something in the agenda prior to that somebody wants to discuss. The non-unfinished business is the board appointments. Is there any discussion on the board appointments? Mr. Kelly.
I still do not understand why in the hell you all are opposing them. They all sound like quality people and it would promote diversity. And, you know, is the vendetta against Frank worth it?
I can tell you, Mr. Kelly, I did reach out to Mr. Haney and offered it a negotiation. Hey, let's meet somewhere in the middle. And I was told absolutely not. So I'm not going to accept all the blame. I did ask Mr. Haney if he would negotiate with us, and he said that's not an option. So I wouldn't place the blame at all of our feet. He's not willing to negotiate either. Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To respond to Mr. Kelly, my opinion, the Housing Authority appointment is another teacher. We just in March appointed a teacher to that same board. I would prefer to have people who have experience in the business. Secondly, that board is, the majority of those members are minority people already. There's one white man on the board now. So it's not that particular one. You can't say it's in the interest of diversity because it's not a diverse board. And also, I believe all of these appointments for all of them are Democrats. So that was the other thing I talked to Dorothy Red about, because she has that diversity committee. There should be a mix of perspectives in the appointments that we make so that you have, you know, various points of views brought to the table. So they're quality people, but I don't think they're quality appointments. That being said, I mean, if the majority of the board wanted to bring them forward, that's fine, but I would vote against them. Well, I'd vote against some of them anyway, but that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
I would expect us to have the same 5 to 15 vote as we have in the last several meetings. Any other discussion on this topic? We'll move on to standing committee reports. Looks like finance is first one up. And it's just 2 items that have been read in and are here to be laid over. Is there any discussion on the items that had been laid over? Any other questions for finance committee? See none, we'll move on to zoning. I don't see Mr. Webster yet. Is there anybody from zoning? Mr. Schultz, can you speak to any of these by chance?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The couple of items are connected. They relate to a property, and I'm scrambling for the name, but it's a commercial entity that owns property right by a railroad in the ag district, and there were 2 aspects to it. One was they want to put a solar, not solar farm, but just for their own energy use. And based on reading the testimony from the ZBA today, it's not intended to be anything beyond their exact usage. And the way it would work is it would connect to the grid so that during the season that they're not using its grain elevator kind of an operation, where they're not using it as intensely, they would be accumulating credits that would then be applied to their usage. On average, it would come out to be even. And then the other part was was, as I read it, honestly, just a mistake on the part of our planning and zoning committee, or not committee, but office historically, where on this same property, there were building permits that were taken out and there was approval given in terms of an expansion of their facility there in this location, but it went over a line into an area that was also zoned ag. So some of it was in the proper zoning and the parcel was the right parcel to have that building constructed, but some of it went over the line. And so the second part of this was to correct that and to rezone enough of the property so that, like with a lot of these, if it were to burn down, they would be able to rebuild it. The zoning would already be in place. And the reason I say I believed as I looked at it that it was a mistake of our own office was that the plans were signed off by our then, people that were on the job in our department and could have potentially caught that, wait a minute, this is going to go over the line.
Thank you. Is there any questions from Mr. Schultz about the zoning?
No, I got a comment though.
Oh, Mr. Webster's here. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I finally got hooked up here. Hey, great job of explaining that, Steve. That was perfect, man. So anyways, yeah, he hit the nail on the head about all of that stuff, I think. And it came through Zoning Board of Appeals unanimously. I don't know. I got in late. Maybe he told you that. But I don't see where there'll be an issue on it on our committee, at least not from my point of view. So it'll be read in Thursday. And if you want to suspend, fine. If you don't want to suspend, that's okay too. Because it won't affect them, I don't think, either way.
Excellent.
So, and the thing about suspending, when things are all in line there from both committees, and if board members don't have an issue with it, sometimes it's not a bad idea to suspend from the perspective that zoning, from the time people come in, walk in the door, start the paperwork until it culminates in an end, is generally about 3 months. It takes forever, just because that's the way it is. So they don't have to wait any longer. It's not a bad idea, but that's up to the board. Okay.
Somebody else just called it. Yeah, who's that? Ends in 2710.
Pardon me?
Somebody else just called in. Phone number ended in 2710. Who's that?
Aaron Booker's here, but I don't know about what number is showing up.
All right. That's you then, Mr. Booker. We'll show you and Mr. Webster in attendance now. And was there any other comments for Mr. Webster on zoning? On economic development, there's nothing on the agenda. Do you know if there's anything to discuss? No report tonight. Public Works, any discussion for Public Works? That brings us to Mr. Booker with Public Safety.
Thank you, Chairman. Public Safety has no report.
There are 5 resolutions on the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Five resolutions. I've been looking for. I'm sorry?
I can read them off for you if that helps.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm unaware of any resolutions on any public safety agenda.
A resolution authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute an independent contractor agreement for services as a Winnebago County community liaison.
That's what
Okay,
Tommy,
all right.
Pardon?
that's what Tommy means. Right? Oh, I know why. Aaron wasn't there for the meeting. That's why you didn't.
I just got back from Virginia yesterday, and I left last Thursday, and I'm unaware of any meeting that was scheduled or had or anything.
Fellers ran the meeting.
Feller. Mr.
Yeah.
Arena, are you prepared? Can you speak to these items, Paul?
Somewhat. The item 2 is an agreement between the county and Tommy Meeks for his, I think it's like job training. It's a renewal of an existing agreement at the same terms. Last year he gave a presentation on it, and I remember being impressed by what he was doing. So it was, I believe, unanimously approved. 3, resolution authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute a memorandum of agreement between Winnebago County Judicial Circuit and Remedies Renewing Lives. This might be this one, and the next one I think are for substance abuse. What I think is relevant on these two for me was that they're funded from our general fund or from the 1% sales tax. And they were budgeted in this budget cycle. But in my opinion, they were items that should have been budgeted from the mental health tax. And I think we need to figure out how to address that moving forward. Because I recall I asked about it in committee, and Angie Gorel pointed out that they're funded through the 1%. And I know that there was some commitment with the 1% to fund alternative programs. But now that we have the mental health tax, I think we need to narrow that down on exactly how much are we committed from the 1% public safety sales tax to go toward these programs. Because, I mean, obviously this year we were still short on the budget. We had to borrow money from the host fees and raise taxes to make ends meet. So we have to take steps over the next year. So I don't know at what point in time is the correct time to talk about that, but we should. The number 5, the agreement with the Forest Preserve District is a contract for police services by the Sheriff's Department. Deputy Chief Saganik spoke to it and said it's fully funded. Whatever costs we incur will be compensated.
Good.
And the last one, resolution authorizing the execution of a renewal agreement with Blue Cross Blue Shield for the administration of a self-insured POS and PPO insurance plan. I don't recall the details of it, but it was not controversial at all. So that's the best I can do to my recollection.
I thank you, Mr. Arena. Is there any questions?
Again, thank you, Mr. Arena, for filling in for me. But yeah, I checked my emails today and I didn't see anything. And I left for Virginia last Thursday and I got back late last night. So my apologies.
No, that's quite all right. Yeah, that's when the meeting was, last Thursday.
All
That's funny. I'm going to have, okay.
Personnel and policy. Is there anyone from that committee that can speak to any of these items, resolutions?
Mr. Webster, you want to do this one?
What are you suggesting, Paul?
Well, no, Jim Webster's also on that committee with me. He didn't respond. Here's what I remember. So the resolution authorizing River Bluff Nursing Home to admit out-of-county residents. This is something that the director of the nursing home said is typical of nursing homes to take people from other areas. This would be not just people from Illinois, but people from out of state also. Priority placement would be given for people who are in Winnebago County or who are residents of Winnebago County. This is necessary because of our shortfall in revenue from the nursing home to get the beds filled, so they have a sufficient cash flow. My one concern about it was that these people would be receiving public assistance or could be receiving public assistance. So we're bringing in people from out of state to Illinois to become residents and then receive public assistance from the state. And I was told by the director of the nursing home that it's very common for that to happen, and it's not at all out of, unusual or, not an ordinary practice. So,
Mr. Schultz has a question on that, Mr. Arena.
okay,
Mr.
I'll
Schultz?
do my best.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comment has more to do with the 50,000 foot level on this, where what I thought you were going to say, Mr. Arena, is first of all that the assistance is not necessarily from the state, but actually out of the county levy that we have, because we have money that goes from the county to subsidize River Bluff Nursing Home as part of our levy. So that is a de facto subsidy of out-of-state people, in addition to the state aid. But the other aspect of this that just, again, big picture philosophical struggle I have is, all right, we have these private entities that run nursing homes, and the county homes would naturally be thought of where, okay, in your particular locality, there's a need because the private homes are too expensive or they're somehow inadequate to provide for the need. And so the government has to step in, the county, and subsidize and provide administration for and the resources around a home to exist. And, in that big picture point of view, it seems as though having to get people from a different county, not just out of state, but I mean, in this case, another county, would be at cross purposes with that concept of this is a need for your immediate community. And that's why you have to subsidize it. That's why you have to set it up, make sure that it's functional. Is that making any sense to you guys?
Right.
We'll go to Mr. Butita first and then Ms. Crosby.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Schultz, it does make a little sense to me. But when this was proposed to us last Thursday, my initial thought was, okay, we got a resource. We want to be able to attract as many people to that resource to drive down our fixed costs. So I don't have a big issue with bringing other people in. There might be the issue of subsidization, but it seems to me that there would probably be more revenue coming in. But my bigger concern, and it's not really about this resolution or this attempt to bring in additional residents from out of the county. It's more of and it goes back to comments that Mr. Schultz made at a couple finance meetings ago when after we'd had the auditor come in and discuss with us the cash flow problem that River Bluff was, giving the general fund. So they were not collecting their receivables. So the fact that we're going to bring in additional people without having a better mechanism of receivables didn't make much sense. But the director made the statement that has been fixed. And all we know is by her word. I don't have any confirmation. She says the wrong people were in the wrong position at that time. So now I'll take her at her word. And this is probably not an issue that this board is going to resolve, but I think we need a comprehensive look at River Bluff, because I think Mr. Schultz could be right. I mean, he was suggesting that we, either, subsidize it out, or not subsidize it, I'm sorry, farm it out, contract it out, sell it, do something to eliminate that cash drain. And correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, if I'm paraphrasing you incorrectly, but I believe that was the gist of what you're saying, that it was sucking money out of our general fund. That, we needed to find a way to stop that. And so, it's going to take time to put that information together. It's probably going to be the next board that decides on these issues. But, starting now to start collecting information and understanding what is actually going on out there and what our long-term projections are, I think is important for the county. And just on another note, I would say that, I just read where Boone County, they apparently farmed out or contracted out their county nursing home some time ago. I'm not sure how long ago, but they're now looking at selling it. They don't have a buyer, but they're going to pass a resolution, I guess, to the effect that if somebody pops up, they want, and I don't know if it was a referendum, it might have been a referendum they were going to have to ask the voters for the permission to sell it, which I guess we would have to do also. I'm not sure, but I would like to see a big, robust discussion about the long-term effects of River Bluff on our county and what our options are. And I don't expect that this board is going to decide it. It's probably going to be the next board, but it's going to be a lot of the same players also. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Butita. Ms. Crosby.
I agree with Steve. I think he's dead center on this issue. The flip side to that is with Belvedere looking to sell their facility, it may increase the amount of residents that we have at our facility, but it has been a real drain on the county coffers, and we cannot sustain that year after year after year after year after year. And that's what we've been doing. It's been between $2 and $3 million every year. And if you take that times the 10 years that we've been in the hole, that's a lot of money. So I agree with them. And if we need a referendum, which we do, in order to sell it, that would be the road to take. But I'm also open to the fact that if Belvedere sells or Boone County sells, then we have an opportunity to pick up those residents.
Thank you, Ms. Crosby. Mr. Kelly.
Maybe. Thank you, Chairman. Back in the early 90s, I worked for a company that owned 130 nursing homes nationwide, and they were renting them out under triple net leases. The renters were obligated to pay for everything. Maintenance, upkeep, replacement costs, everything. And I think that's another option we could look at, is renting them out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Agree, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Arena, did you have anything to add to this? Oh, Mr. Schultz, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just to follow up on what how Mr. Butita characterized my comments related to the Finance Committee, I did say, and the evidence is in the documentation that was provided to the Finance Committee at a recent meeting where the River Bluff item was on display, where the cumulative fund balances over the last 4 or 5 years and the deficits were there in a chart. And it was a devastating picture. The only thing I would add to what was already said is that when the administrator says that, well, we now have assigned the correct person on the accounts receivable.
Yeah, I hear you.
That's very different from us actually having collected the money. And that
Good point.
that is still the outstanding problem. Say, regardless of whether you had the wrong person in the job, they have not by a long shot collected the millions of dollars that are sitting on the books. And that's what's driving this negative cash. And that and the operating deficits, the combination of those two things. So it's definitely on the radar. We know of Mr. Thompson. I've seen him, address this with very brief comments, but the appearance is that he is taking this on behind the scenes. And it might be wise to just at some point, whether it's you, Mr. McDonald, or someone else, just confirm that he has a plan for this, that he and Steve are moving it forward, or, you know, whoever the right players are. My strong sense, you know, this is, forgive me for making this a lengthy conversation, but from the time that I came on the board 12 years ago to the present, the relative valuing of that as an asset for the community seems to have changed dramatically, where they were heavily populated at the time. They were relatively well run at the time. They were a going concern. And yes, they had challenges, and they have had challenges, but there was far more of a active interest and involvement. But in the preceding, in the successive years here to the present, the decline in terms of the administration, the decline in terms of the population, and the apparent lack of community support, I think has reached the point where a referendum 12 years ago, I think, would have failed, whereas today, with all the points that we've already discussed, I think it would actually have a great chance of success.
Yeah.
Agree, Mr. Schultz. Anything else on that? If not, we'll go back to Mr. Arena on the other items for personnel policy.
Well, the only other comment I want to make on the nursing home is I think we also have to look at how long the new director has been on the job. I think it's been less than a year, hasn't it? You know, we might need to give some time for things to stabilize it. Yeah, and maybe that's part of Mr. Thompson's assessment of the situation, but he seems to imply that it's going in the right direction, but for what that's worth. The rest of these items are related to insurance issues. And to tell you the truth, I don't recall the details of them. I think they're just renewing existing agreements. I don't, Mr. Butita, I think you listened in on that meeting. Do you recall anything in particular on these other three items?
Actually, I think I stepped away from that. Was more interested. There was a closed meeting, so I didn't really catch the.
I can help, I think, in this situation. Okay. They are renewals. They are, you had the description as to why the work that needed to be done was actually done on each of these items. It does appear, though, that there's a duplication where the item that's item 6 on the public safety actually should be stricken because it's duplicated. It didn't really make sense to me that it was in the public safety to begin with. So that sort of explains it, that it was listed twice.
Good catch. And once in a while we'll do that if the operations and finance does it. So I thought it maybe was a situation like that, but it's just a duplicate. Are there any other questions about personnel policy? And I'm going to go back to the nursing home for just one more moment. I think this is good. If we do pass where we're going to allow other people to come and we still continue to fail, we've shown the taxpayers we've done everything we can think of to try to have some success out there, and it just hasn't happened. I think that will, I'm planning for the worst case scenario, but that'll show the taxpayers, the voters, when it goes to referendum, that this probably is time to happen. Is there anyone else has anything for the good of the order? About a motion to adjourn?
Just if I might, and I apologize. It does not have to be tonight, but Mr. Chairman, if you could help us understand, I saw on the agenda December 7th is a Monday night where it's the organizing meeting of the county. If you could, maybe at the next meeting of the caucus, just help us understand what's our process going to be. Just something as simple as, do you want us to indicate our interest regarding committees that we would serve on to you personally? what's the pathway, the methodology in terms of, if there are contested seats, how are we going to bring that up for a vote? It's not critical, it's not for tonight, but if you could lay that out, I think it would be helpful to the caucus to know, okay, here's our process.
Sure. No, thank you for that feedback, and I will, as soon as we are further down the road, I will absolutely let you know that process. Obviously, I'm new at this. I'll digress to Mr. Boomer and those before him, how the process has gone, but I will get something. I believe we have it in writing even. Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's at that meeting where I believe we adopt our rules of procedure. And I think I would like us to have a conversation about our rules of procedure. In particular, I think that if I recall, it says in them now that new business should be introduced at the at a board meeting. And I've talked to Pat about this. It's always felt to me like things get shoved through here a little quicker than I'd like, with a little bit less detail than I'd like. So I thought if things that are going to come through the committee process are first made aware, brought to our attention by being on a under new business, so that we can pay attention when it's in committee if it's something that's important to us, and also to require that we get a summary attached to all of these items that give an explanation of what they're about, a paragraph or so from staff. That would be helpful to all of us. Pat seemed to agree that the tempo here is a little faster than what he's used to in terms of getting things done. And it would require staff to just become used to the fact that they can't just, wait till the last moment to bring something to a committee and then bring it to the board. So I think that primarily is what I'd like to see change. And Pat also mentioned about having our committees scheduled in advance, long term, so everyone knows when the committee meetings are, that we seem to schedule them on an as-need basis. And he thought that it might be good for them to be scheduled so that staff knows, when the committee meetings are, and have a better idea of how things would go. So if we're going to have a discussion about changing it, I think we need to start doing that soon, so we can, take our time with it and really think it through. So we're not coming right up to the deadline to try to get that resolved.
Yeah, you and I have spoke about this, Mr. Rain, and I agree with you. We should be bringing up new business at the board meeting, give everybody, not just as board members, but everybody a better heads up of what's coming down the pipe.
Right, and get the community more involved as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To partially address Mr. Schultz's question as well, I do not intend on running for caucus chairman again. So I know we have a lot of great members in the Republican caucus. I just want to throw that out there right quick, that I will not be running for caucus chair again. So those of you kick it around or figure out who you are that want to run for it. But there's obvious examples in our caucus of people who have had time to drill down and get better answers than I have. I think it's only right for me to step aside and let those people shine through. So that's the only thing I know for sure, is I won't be seeking this appointment again. But other than that, as far as the rest of it, Mr. Schultz, I don't know the rest of the answers. Are there any questions? How about a motion to adjourn now?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Schultz. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.